Hello guys, myself Krishna and today we'll be discussing mainly on the adrenal gland, right? So within this adrenal gland, we'll discuss everything. I mean, not only the anatomy, physiology, we'll also go into the clinical cases, I mean in the internal medicine. So today we'll be mainly focusing on what is Cushing disease and what is Cushing syndrome, because many of the students get confused the difference between Cushing disease and Cushing syndrome, and most of them tell they both are same, but no, they both are different actually. So we'll discuss what is Cushing disease, what is Cushing syndrome, and we'll also discuss how to diagnose that. Okay, so first of all, let's start with the basic anatomy. As you know, adrenal gland is located on the top of the kidney. That is the reason why you also call adrenal gland as suprarenal gland. So if I have taken an adrenal gland, and I'll explain the anatomy of this. So look, adrenal gland has two parts. The center part is called as adrenal medulla. Other than the center part is called as adrenal cortex. So look here, this center part which I am drawing now, right? So this one is called as adrenal medulla. The function of adrenal medulla is synthesis of catecholamines, I mean the epinephrine, norepinephrine hormones, which are responsible for the sympathetic drive, that is fight or flight response, right? So anyways, this is adrenal medulla. Outer than this, all of this is adrenal cortex. Adrenal cortex is divided into three layers. Adrenal cortex is divided into three layers. So this is your outermost layer of the adrenal cortex, and this is the second and the third layer of the adrenal cortex. Look. So this is your first layer, outermost layer, this is the middle, and this is the third layer. Now the important thing is, the examiners will confuse you in these three layers, because three layers are named differently. At the same time, three layers secrete three different types of hormones. So they may jumble and confuse you. So for that reason, I'll give you a mnemonic now. So first of all, let's name the layer. The outermost layer is named as, okay, before that I'll give you a mnemonic. Look, GFR. What does GFR stands for in your renal physiology? GFR stands for glomerular filtration rate, right? But glomerular filtration rate has nothing to do with the adrenal gland. But for a while, just think GFR stands for glomerular filtration rate. Look, GFR. Clear? GFR. Now, what does G stand for? G stands for zona glomerulosa. F stands for zona fasciculata. R stands for zona reticularis. Clear? Now, these are the three different zones. Now, these three different zones synthesizes three different hormones. Now, what are these three different hormones? Look, there is a small mnemonic again here. AGM. From the top to bottom, you came from the cortex to medulla. Now, from the medulla to towards the cortex. Look, AGM. AGM. And what is A? What does A stands for? A stands for androgens. A stands for androgens. What are the different types of, what is an example for androgens? Androgens are nothing but called as your sex hormones. The testosterone, progesterone, estrogen, all of these are called as androgens, and they are synthesized from the innermost layer, that is zona reticularis of the adrenal gland, right? Next, zona fasciculata. What is zona fasciculata? Here it is G. G in the sense glucocorticoids. One example of glucocorticoid is cortisol, the most important glucocorticoid. Why I am telling it is most important? Because any in USMLE step 1 or in PLAB step 1 or any exams, in endocrinology topic, most of the questions are asked based upon the cortisol levels. Based upon the cortisol, patient has high BP, patient has very moon-like face, patient has obesity. All of these are the effects of cortisol. We'll discuss one by one. But for a while, glucocorticoids example is cortisol. Next, glomerulosa. Okay. First, M stands for Glomerulosa releases M. What is this M? M stands for mineralocorticoids. Mineralocorticoids. Right. Now look. What is an example for mineralocorticoids? Aldosterone. Aldosterone. So today we'll be discussing mainly on cortisol, because Cushing disease and Cushing syndrome are both of them based upon cortisol. And regarding the aldosterone, I already have a video on aldosterone. So when you feel free, then go and find that video. Next, androgens. About androgens we'll talk later. So for today we'll be talking mainly on cortisol. Okay. So this is clear, right? So we'll go to the next step. I mean the effects of the cortisol. So what are the effects of the cortisol? There are many effects. When you shift from when you study one book, there will be some effects. When you go to another book, there will be another effects. So you'll be confused, but you have to remember all those effects. So I'll give you 6 major effects, and that is enough, right? So you no need to get confused by reading any other book. Cortisol effects. Cortisol effects. So look, can you remember this one? Sorry. Can you remember this one? Big fib. Big fib. If you can remember big fib, then the effects of cortisol are done. These 3, big always increases, and these 3, fib, always decreases, right? Now let's talk about the effects. Look, the first effect, B stands for blood pressure. High level of cortisol causes increase in blood pressure. Why increase? Because I told these 3 are increased, right? So there will be increase blood pressure. Increase blood pressure. Second function, okay, we'll stop it here. Increase blood pressure. Increase blood pressure in the sense hypertension, right? So increased cortisol directly leads to hypertension, right? In your books you will find HTN. HTN is the abbreviated form of hypertension. Next, I. What does I stand for? I stands for insulin resistance. Insulin. Let me change the marker color so that you can see it clearly. So first effect is raised blood pressure. Second effect is insulin resistance. Now what does insulin resistance mean? Type 2 diabetes? In type 2 diabetes, okay, let's talk about type 1 diabetes. In type 1 diabetes, there is glucose in the body, in the blood. This glucose, we need to send it into the cells. Because when glucose is outside in the blood, it is useless. When it is sent into the cell uses this glucose and generate energy. So who is ordering the glucose to enter into the cell? It is the insulin. But in type 1 diabetes, as pancreas is damaged, insulin is not released, so there is no one to order the glucose to enter into the cell. These are your cells, right? And here is your glucose molecules. And this blue color thing which I am drawing is the insulin. Now insulin will order glucose to enter into the cell. This is the normal scenario. But if there is no insulin, who will order glucose to enter into the cell? No one. As a result, the glucose levels will be raised in the blood. This is hyperglycemia, right? So this condition where there is no secretion of insulin due to damage of pancreas is called as type 1 diabetes. Now, type 2 diabetes. In type 2 diabetes also, look, these are the cells. Here is your glucose molecules. And pancreas is not damaged in type 2 diabetes. In type 2 diabetes, everything is fine. Pancreas is fine. It releases normally insulin as it has to release. And whenever the glucose levels start to rise in the blood, the pancreas they normally release insulin, and insulin is released into the blood. But now what is the function of insulin? Insulin has to order glucose to enter into the cell. But glucose will not listen to anyone. Glucose will never listen to anyone. Either it is insulin or any other compound, glucose will not listen. Glucose will not listen to insulin, first of all. Even though insulin orders the glucose to enter into the cell, but glucose will not listen. As a result, what is happening? Insulin levels are rising in the blood, glucose levels are also rising in the blood. So this is called as insulin resistance, which we can find in type 2 diabetes. Now, what is the effect of cortisol and insulin resistance? It increases this activity. This activity, so-called insulin resistance, is increased with the help of cortisol. Right? So, look now, if a patient is type 2 diabetic and if he is taking a lot of cortisol, if he is taking shots of cortisol from a long time, then his type 2 diabetes will worsen or will it become normal? It will worsen. So, cortisol is contraindicated in case of patients with type 2 diabetes. When we will talk about how insulin orders glucose to enter into the cell, that time I will be discussing everything about type 2 diabetes. Because there are receptors over here, insulin receptors, they are damaged. That is the reason why glucose cannot enter into that. So I don't want to go deep into that now. Later on we'll discuss. But for a while, just remember that cortisol causes increased insulin resistance, right? Next, third effect, G. G for gluconeogenesis. Increase gluconeogenesis. What does gluconeogenesis mean? You know, formation of new glucose from a non-carbohydrate compound. So when more amount of glucose is formed, what is going to happen? Hyperglycemia. Hyperglycemia. What is the normal amount of glucose in our blood in millimole per liter? It is around normal level is 3.3 to 5.5 millimole per liter. If it is more than 5.5, it is hyperglycemia, right? So these three effects rise, as you see here. And now next three effects. Next three effects are F. F in the sense fibroblast activity. So there will be decreased fibroblast activity. Have you seen any time in fat people, there will be some stretch marks on the body here and in the inguinal regions and under the arms, under the shoulders, in the axillary creases. So these stretch marks are nothing but called as striae. So these striae are formed as a result of decreased fibroblast activity, right? So decreased fibroblast activity causes formation of striae. Second effect. What is the second effect? I. What is an I? This is the famous effect. You know, glucocorticoids cause immune suppression. Glucocorticoids cause immune suppression. So if you give me glucocorticoids, my immune system will be suppressed and I will be more exposed to bacterial infections, viral infections and fungal infections, right? But this effect is important because if a patient is having any autoimmune disease, that is where his own antibodies start to destruct his own tissues, in that case you have to reduce the activity or decrease the activity of immune system. So in that case you give glucocorticoids. But in fact the side effect for the patient will be he should be very careful or else he will be more exposed to these infections, bacterial, viral, right? Next, B. B stands for decrease bone formation. Now, how does cortisol affect on the bone formation? Look, very simple. Whenever you are taking food, whenever you are taking calcium food, this is your stomach. Look, whenever you are taking calcium food, whenever you are taking calcium, Normally, in our body there is vitamin D. What is the chemical form of vitamin D? It is 125 hydroxy, 125 dihydroxy, or 125 hydroxy cholecalciferol. Right? This is vitamin D, actual form of vitamin D. So this vitamin D takes up this calcium, whatever calcium is there, takes up this calcium into the blood. It reabsorbs, it absorbs the calcium into the blood. So in the blood, the calcium levels are increased. So this calcium later on, this is your bone, this calcium later on enters into the bone and mineralizes the bone. So this is the normal thing happening. But if you give cortisol, this process is stopped. The absorption of calcium is stopped from the intestine. So as a result, what happens? Whatever you take, it will come out. It is defecated, it is washed out. So as a result, in a blood, there will be low calcium levels. So low calcium levels lead to low bone formation. That is why here it is decreased bone formation. So these are the effects of cortisol, right? So cortisol causes hypertension, cortisol causes insulin resistance, cortisol causes hyperglycemia, it forms strain on the body, it causes immune suppression, which results in exposure to many bacterial, viral as well as fungal diseases, and decreased bone formation leading to osteoporosis. So these are the effects of cortisol. Now we will discuss the difference between Cushing syndrome as well as Cushing disease. So let's look at it. Let's look here. This is hypothalamus. This is pituitary gland, right? And this is your adrenal gland, right? By the way, what hormones do the this is the posterior pituitary, and I already talked about hypothalamus and the pituitary gland in my videos, I think, so better go and check there. But for a while, very fastly, this is anterior pituitary, this is posterior pituitary. What are the hormones synthesized from the posterior pituitary? There are only two hormones. One is oxytocin, another one is vasopressin. The other name for vasopressin is antidiuretic hormone, right? And hormones from the anterior pituitary are 6. How do you remember those hormones? Very simple. If you can remember this, flat pig. Of course, pigs don't be flat, but in endocrinology there are flat pigs. Okay. F stands for FSH. L stands for LH, luteinizing hormone. A stands for ACTH. T stands for TSH. P stands for prolactin. There is no I. G stands for growth hormone. So this is the way how you remember the hormones of anterior pituitary. Right. Anyways, so let's get back into the topic. Look, normally what happens when there are insufficient levels of cortisol in my blood? When there are insufficient levels, for example, if adrenal gland is not able to release enough cortisols, or adrenal gland is silent for some time and it is not at all releasing cortisol. So what will happen when adrenal gland is not releasing cortisol? The levels of cortisol will be reduced in my blood. Now this decreased cortisol level will trigger or will activate the anterior pituitary. Decreased cortisol level, look here, decreased cortisol level will activate the anterior pituitary to release what? ACTH. Now this ACTH will act on the adrenal cortex. Which layer exactly? Zona fasciculata. But the thing is, there are 3 layers as I told you. GFR. ACTH can act on zona fasciculata and cause release of cortisol. It can also act on zona reticularis and cause release of sex hormones. But ACTH cannot act on zona glomerulosa and cause release of mineralocorticoids. ACTH can act on these 2 layers but not this layer. Then who is going to activate zona glomerulosa for the secretion of aldosterone? Increased level of cortisol. Fasciculata releases cortisol, right? Increased level of cortisol activates zona glomerulosa. This is the first thing. Second thing is renin angiotensin aldosterone system. I already talked about in my previous videos. In that, the angiotensin 2 activates zona glomerulosa and causes release of aldosterone. So these are the two ways through which zona glomerulosa is activated, and there is only one way through which zona fasciculata and reticularis is activated, that is through ACTH. Right? Now look, decreased cortisol levels, positive mechanism, positive feedback mechanism. It triggers anterior pituitary to release ACTH. Now ACTH will activate adrenal gland, and of course it will activate the zona fasciculata, and again the cortisol levels start to rise. Now cortisol levels again they start to build up. Now when already cortisol levels are low, now ACTH is released, cortisol levels started to rise. Now cortisol levels reach to the normal level. Too much if it reaches also there are problems, as I talked previously, right? So cortisol level reaches to normal level. Now once cortisol level is reached to normal level, then what happens is this increased cortisol will send signals to anterior pituitary telling that it's enough. So increased cortisol will inhibit anterior pituitary. As a result, there will be no secretion of ACTH or completely low secretion of ACTH. So this is the positive and negative feedback mechanisms that are happening between the pituitary, anterior pituitary and the adrenal gland. So if you understood this basic, now you will understand what is Cushing disease and Cushing syndrome. Look. Now look. If there is adrenal adenoma in the sense cancer of the adrenal cortex. When there is cancer of the adrenal cortex, will adrenal cortex release more cortisol or no? Of course, because one cell is releasing little amount of cortisol. If there is adrenal adenoma, one cell is divided into some millions of cells, hundreds. So how much should they release? So as a result, look, when there is adrenal adenoma, there is hypersecretion of cortisol. Here there is an adrenal adenoma. Adrenal adenoma caused hypersecretion of cortisol. Now what does this do? As I told you, when cortisol level is more, it sends it sends signals to the anterior pituitary telling that it's enough. There should be no release of ACTH no more, because already my levels are more. Now ACTH should be reduced. So cortisol negatively inhibits anterior pituitary. As a result, anterior pituitary will not release ACTH. So the level of ACTH in the blood will be decreased. Now see here, as a result of adenoma, cortisol level is increased, ACTH level is decreased in the blood. This condition is called Cushing syndrome. This condition is called Cushing syndrome, right? So how will you diagnose this Cushing syndrome? When you take the blood from the patient, there will be increase cortisol and decrease ACTH. Of course, there are many other methods as well. You can do CT scans and all, but the best test is the blood test, CBC, where you will find increased cortisol and decreased ACTH. Now coming to the opposite side, look here. Let's shift this tumor to the anterior pituitary. If there is anterior pituitary, okay, let me write here. This is adrenal adenoma, right? So that you don't get confused. This is the case of adrenal adenoma. Now here there is anterior pituitary adenoma. If there is tumor in the anterior pituitary adenoma, look here, there is a tumor here, and this tumor is causing increased secretion of ACTH. ACTH is secreted very, very vigorously, like this. Hypersecretion of ACTH. Now tell me, when there is hypersecretion of ACTH, what happens? This increased secretion will activate adrenal gland, I think you know the remaining story, right? Increased secretion will activate positive influence on the adrenal gland, and adrenal gland also will release very high cortisol. The cortisol levels are also increased. Now, when cortisol level is increased, what should it do? What should cortisol do? As I told you, negative feedback mechanism. Cortisol should negatively inhibit anterior pituitary, telling that it's enough. But can it inhibit now? No, because there is a tumor here. There is a tumor. Now, cortisol can no more control anterior pituitary gland, because anterior pituitary gland has no control over any hormone in our body now, because it is completely having tumor. So there will be increased cortisol, there will be increased ACTH. So how you diagnose this patient? You look the difference between both of this. Both of them cortisol levels are more, but coming to the ACTH levels, in anterior pituitary adenoma they are more, and in Cushing syndrome they are less. So yeah, in Cushing syndrome they are less. Sorry, in case of adrenal adenoma, ACTH levels are less. In case of anterior pituitary adenoma, the ACTH levels are more. This condition you call it as Cushing disease. This condition you call it as Cushing disease. I hope everything is clear. So if you have any doubts, then feel free to ask, comment below. And yeah, that's it. That is the end of the video. This is Krishna signing off Medico Tutorials. Please don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.